Hello, you all. This is Dr. Hathaway. I'm coming to you all from a talk with the community. And yes, I am sporting my Jackson State alumni mask. I want to inform you all that I took the opportunity today to go and vote early for the presidency as well as the local and state elections here in the state of Arkansas. There was a great amount of joy that I experienced today. For the very first time in American history, there was a black woman at the top of the ticket. I was so moved to the point that I started to develop tears, you all. I also believe for the very first time in my life, and I've been voting since I was 18 years old, I had an opportunity to not only vote for the first black woman to appear on the top of a presidential ticket. I also voted for two other African American women. One in which, if given the opportunity and allowed to fill that elected seat come Tuesday of next week, she will be the first African American, the first woman to be a U.S. Congresswoman from District 2 of Central Arkansas. Also, another great candidate for state representative, Miss Janie Cotton, um, also will be going to the legislature if given the opportunity on Tuesday of next week. I just want to let you all know that I cannot press enough upon you, as well as we've been inundated over the radio, the airwaves, on social media, in every platform possible, the significance of this overall election. Um, we know that we're living in some perilous and difficult times, but I also want to express the fact that we still have hope. We still have a chance to change our trajectory. Transformation is always in order. And this also tells us that we not only need to continue this organizational effort during a presidential election year, but also during other times when we're not always so focused on the matters at hand. I know that we continue to hear from our elected and appointed officials the importance of going out to vote. But here are just a few things that America recognizes. America recognizes power, and America recognizes money. And we may not always have money in many of our communities of color, but our collectivity comes with our ability to go out and vote and be able to flex and maneuver our power, demonstrate our ability when we go to the ballot box. Um, I know oftentimes we hear that people bled, suffered, and died for us to have the right to vote, and that is very accurate. People of color have endured a great deal being here in the Americas as well as globally. We cannot forget about the impediments of the peculiar institution of the enslavement of people of color, not just those of African ancestry, but of other hues and identifying nationalities. Um, but I will say that this is our time. Unlike many other of the previous, this is our time. And we have a chance to do more than what we are able, or what we may believe that we have been able to in years past, if we so choose. I have been listening to commentary that states nearly 70 million people have cast their ballot early thus far as we prepare for the general election on Tuesday, November 3rd. Um, that is significant within itself. This is the highest number of people that have voted early in many of the previous elections. Um, so the significance and the importance of this election is ever more pressing. Also, I want us to not be dismayed just because we have, as Democrats, I'm going to say this much, although we as Democrats have lost previous elections, the 2016 election was due to low voter turnout. And I don't believe that will be the case this time around. I really believe that we will be victorious and cause a blue wave across this nation if we are so inclined. We just need to continue to keep these numbers up so that we can attain a majority in every state, locally, federally, win back the Senate if the tides and the times allow us to be able to do so. There are a number of elected officials that are in some vulnerable and sensitive positions right now. And if we just show up, get our loved ones, get our older family members, those that are voting for the very first time to the polls, I know that we can make a major shift across this land. Um, I have a few notes that I wrote down. I know sometimes, especially over the last 4 to 5 years, we may be feeling the brunt and some pains, and it feels as if sometimes we're slipping back into the age of Reconstruction. It may begin to feel like at days that we are re-experiencing, or what has been reignited is the feeling of Jim Crow segregation. And I've said that very emphatically because it has those similar sentiments. The head of racism has cropped up, and it does not seem as if it's going away. I've written previously that what has been unleashed into the ether will not be extinguished come January 20th, 2021, nor January 20th, um, 2025. It's not going to be that simplistic. It's going to take a long road. It's going to take a lot of time. We cannot run away from an agenda being pressed that represents women and millennials, people of color. Um, Even in the upcoming Biden and Harris administration. This is only the beginning. And yes, we'll have some of that same good feeling that we had under the Obama administration. We may even have some of that same good feeling, those economic feelings that we had under the Clinton administration, and other times where we have won under previous presidencies. But we must continue to keep our hand to the tiller. um, just because we'll win does not mean that the action, the mobilization must end there. I've also been listening to a number of commentators, journalists, and reading some papers that express how Ohio may not have their absentee ballots fully ready and counted until the end of November. The date, as perspective now, is November 24th. So we may have to just sit back and wait until those ballots are fully counted. As we know, Ohio typically gives the telltale signs of who will win the overall presidency for the popular vote. Um, what else did I write down? I wrote something specifically about changing institutions. Um, We can always consider the political apparatus to be our means, but we also need to change the healthcare system. We need to change our approach to criminal justice and the penal system. We need to change our approach when it comes to healthcare. I believe that's a restate. Um, Change our court system. This has to be an entire revolution of our conscience, an entire change of the educational system as well. I made a comment this past weekend. I participated in the Arkansas Democratic State Convention, and I made a reference to the need for culturally responsive curriculums, culturally responsive teaching, and pedagogical practices. Simply because this is everyone's America. This is everyone's contribution to democracy. This is everyone's contribution to history and the American dream, as we call it. So everyone's story, everyone's narrative, everyone's plight needs to be accounted for. Everyone needs to have their distinction and their heritage to be explored and discussed just as critically as we have for the majority or Anglican Western civilization dominated culture has in our country as well. And not just here, but also globally. We cannot separate ourselves from the international apparatus. I had written something a few years ago on a talk with the community.com. As you all know, that is my professional, political, and educational blog. Um, and I still want you all to subscribe. I'm always going to throw that plug out there. But I wrote something and I printed it off, and I wanted to share with you all the importance of voting rights as well as voter turnout. Voting is the most fundamental ingredient in democratic society. Whereas in the United States of America, it is an age old issue that is one of the most contested and controversial. The outcomes of elections determine citizenship, freedom, majority and minority status, and matters of national security, healthcare, and overall quality of life. Citizens of America inhabit ought to have the right to be cynical about voting. In part, the frustration comes from six presidential elections not going in favor of the popular vote, which we experienced in 2016. But the citizenry have to take control of the voting reform process. The politically aware must increase engagement, and the unaware have to engage in voting and voter turnout. Because if voting was not important, men and women sitting in city councils, state capitol buildings, and Capitol Hill would not fight so aggressively to suppress suffrage rights. If it were not important, there would not have been a civil war. If it were not important, the ancestors would have been given suffrage when the United States Constitution was written. If it were not important, it would not have been gradual for non white males to gain access to the ballot box. If it were not important, legal action would not have taken place to protect it. If it were not important, it would easily be expanded. There are some solutions that I came up with in order to advance voter rights, to advance those that seek to participate in the electoral process. Youth political engagement. Each school implement the National Student Mock Election or a similar program. Automatic voter registration at age 18. States have the option to authorize 16-year-olds to be able to vote. Overturn Citizens United as well as campaign finance reform. Legally redress Citizens United case. Gradually reduce corporate funding in all local, state, and federal elections. Allow the cap on corporate donations in all elections. When it comes to voting rights, reinstate all portions of the Voting Rights Act. Monitor elections in all states, not just those that are sensitive or had segregation in place to disenfranchise people of color. Investigate voter disenfranchisement and oversight in all states. Criminal re-enfranchisement. Allow felons the right to vote. Incarcerated citizens or incarcerated individuals suffrage via absentee ballot. When it comes to polling places and precincts, wait a minimum of 5 years before purging someone from the voting rolls. I recently heard something as well as read that in the state of Georgia, when there were 500,000 people that were purged from the voting rolls, that was the largest in American history. We cannot have such incidents occur anymore. Reopen polling places to pre-2012 sites. Open early voting polls the Sunday prior to any election. Increase the number of precincts in dense populations. Subsidize or free public transportation to polling places on election day. We need to abolish the Electoral College, one man, one vote. Cybersecurity is another area of interest. Innovate and or break or create backup systems. Increase cybersecurity of voting machines. Increase testing of voting software. End foreign involvement in elections. Increase foreign collaboration to address issues of cybersecurity. Execute both economic and diplomatic sanctions on nations that hack and or interrupt elections. Voter identification. We need to subsidize identification fees when used for voting purposes. Utilize any photo identification for voting. Voter may use any photo identification to cast provisional ballots. When it comes to absentee ballots, hospitalized voters receive an absentee ballot. No excuse to receive an absentee ballot. Voter registration early and on election day is another critical factor. Election day voter registration as well as registration updating. Election day voting hours at a minimum of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in each respective time zone. Online voter registration. Early voting a minimum of 3 weeks prior to election day. Vote by mail in remote areas. I want to talk just briefly about gerrymandering. This is also speaking to the importance of the census. Be counted. Um, Specifically, according to American history, women of color, people of color, um, white women were the last to be able to receive suffrage, to be able to vote, as well as our Native American brothers and sisters were the last to be able to have the right to vote. As I said before, the only thing or the main thing that America acknowledges is money and power, people. And when I say that, if we have our numbers, if we have the ability to show how many of us there actually are, that can pose a high level of power and ability to be able to change not just any election, but the fabric of our nation. So, knowing that this coming year, when all the numbers are combined together for the census, it will tell us a more accurate count of how many people are in our country. And there will be lines drawn all across the country to determine school board district lines, board of director lines, city councils, state legislature districts will be redrawn, as well as federal House of Representative districts will be drawn. And it kind of runs the gamut too. In some states they have magistrates and various judicial uh, district lines will also be drawn based upon the census. And the easiest way, one way for us to break that is through ending gerrymandering. So I seek for us to draw district boundaries using geographical and methodical measures, as well as eliminate partisan gerrymandering. We need to improve voter awareness by conducting a mass media driven voter registration campaign. And lastly, on this portion, if the United States employs all of these measures in which I have just addressed, we will become a global leader in the implementation of the free and fair elections. It will set the standard for what suffrage really looks like. The nation will demonstrate what full enfranchisement is in practice. The country will cast off years of discrimination in its voting practices. Therefore, America will lead the world anew and enact comprehensive voting reform. I plan to come back on Tuesday of next week on election day to prior to the election to give some predictions of what I believe will be the outcomes of our election. I hope that you all will be chiming in during my live feed then as well. I cannot press upon you enough. This is our time, um, and I'm going to pull from the former vice president's statements. We are truly seeking to save the soul of America. Um, we all have a lot at stake, and it's necessary for us to show who we are, to go out and show that we have power, that we have the authority to change the direction in which our country is going, so we can stop sliding down this slippery slope of fascism, um, and really be that shining star, that light on the hill that America is and has the ability to continue to be. Um, if you all want to make any comments, you may do so. Please go out and subscribe to a talkwiththecommunity.com. We are alive and well, and we're coming upon our 7th year anniversary come December 13th. I look forward to continue to share that platform with you all. I call it also the pre-campaign. It's preparing me for whatever the divine and the ancestors see is up ahead of me. Um, Thank you all for your continual support of me and everything that I'm doing. Keep me lifted up and keep my family lifted up, and all those that I'm connected to, as we continue to endure what has been happening throughout our country. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel. We still have hope on a hill that cannot be hid. Thank you all for your continual support.